There are two camps that exist in the movie-going public. People who simply want to be entertained and be able to shut off their brains, and people who want to engage with a film on an artistic level, who enjoy deciphering and analyzing metaphors, symbols, and images. And in my experience, the majority of casual movie fans want brainless entertainment over symbolic art. And that's fine. I mean, I like explosions too. But I often wonder if the majority of people even realize that this distinction exists, that you can't just experience every movie in the same way or judge them all based on the same set of criteria or expectations. Which is why a host of people in my Twitter feed said that they were bored by The Irishman. There's a disconnect somewhere. The Irishman wasn't made to be a big, bombastic blockbuster. Sure, it had the budget like that of a Marvel film, but at its core, The Irishman is a small and human story full of thematic explorations on ambition, morality, and mortality. On the surface, it's 3.5 hours of mostly talking, retro music, and a computerized Robert De Niro. So I can understand why it may not be appealing to people who are judging it the same way they judged Avengers Endgame. It all comes down to what you are expecting from the film when you hit play. So in this video, I want to share with you what I saw in The Irishman, and why I believe it's not only the year's best film, but a cinema masterpiece that will be studied for years to come. So let's get into it. Oh, and obviously, spoilers. Okay, let's start with the obvious. Why did Martin Scorsese insist on the de-aging thing? I mean, at times it didn't even really work, and it looked a bit wonky.
De Niro never ended up looking like this, or like this.
So was this like a gimmick? Was it an ego thing? Was it simply because this kind of thing is cool right now? I don't think so. I believe it was a choice that served an artistic purpose.
And perhaps their goal was not to recreate a young De Niro, but maybe it was to create a young Frank Sheeran.
Think about any other film where different actors are cast to play an older and younger version of the same character. Every time that switch occurs, your brain subconsciously has to do extra work to remind yourself that it's supposed to be the same person. It's not an intuitive thing. And even if it's ever so slightly, this makes it harder for us to empathize with that character. Now, in most films, this isn't really a problem because flashbacks are brief. But in The Irishman, the flashbacks are the whole movie. And Scorsese is quoted as saying that he wanted this film to have a cumulative effect. That is, by the time you get to the end, he wants you to feel the same weight of all the years and decisions and compromises and violence that Frank feels. And I don't think you'd feel it the same way if they cast some other actors to play the various eras of Frank's life. We get to go on the ride right along with him, the same person, the entire time. And in all honesty, it only really distracted me in this scene. By the time he sits down with Pesci and the drama really kicks in, I was enthralled by the world and swept up in the performances. This film is a true work of art, and because of that, each person that watches it with a careful eye will probably notice and take away different things. But here is a list of the 5 major metaphors that I noticed on my first viewing. In an early scene in the movie, Frank sits down with Joe Pesci's character Russell Bufalino and tells him about killing prisoners during World War II. He explains that these prisoners were asked to dig holes in the earth, holes that would serve as their own graves. Frank wonders if these men knew why they were digging, and if so, why they continued to dig. I see this as a metaphor for life itself. We all have an expiration date for when we will leave this earth, and we spend our days working on things that seem important to us in the moment, and building lives for ourselves, or digging. But time makes all things irrelevant. Wait long enough, and future generations won't even know your name. At least, this is one worldview expressed by the film. And this is underscored by the scene at the end of the movie, when the nurse barely knows who Hoffa was.
Who's that with her?
You don't know who that is?
No.
A person of such importance, who you've just learned to care for over 3 hours, reduced to,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Something else to notice here is that this conversation takes place while they're eating bread and wine, a Christian symbol for communion and the Last Supper of Christ. For me, this is rich and layered symbolism. On one hand, it could mean that these two men are bonding, communing with each other on a spiritual level. On the other hand, it could also point to the idea of hope for resurrection. Martin Scorsese films are filled with death scenes. People have died in many interesting ways throughout Goodfellas and Casino. But The Irishman takes all the glory and spectacle away from crime. Every hit job has this long, slow buildup. And then the kill happens in the blink of an eye, cold and unimportant.
Almost as if he's standing back and casting judgment on the murders, as opposed to reveling in them.
This approach makes the death scenes even more impactful in their subtlety due to how quickly the life just falls out of people. One minute they're a person, full of life. The next, a shell. This is even more devastating with Hoffa, who is so lively and physically expressive. When he crumples and lies still after being shot, it is very unsettling. Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance and presumable death is such a large, iconic thing in American society, and Scorsese goes to great pains to make his death grounded in stale, slow realism so that the effect comes across as mundane, ordinary, and even small. Throughout the film, Scorsese cuts to close-up shots of Lucy Galena, the actress who plays the young version of Frank's daughter, Peggy Sheeran. She watches her father, studying him silently as he goes about his life of crime. In one particularly rough scene, she even watches him beat the living crap out of a guy. Their relationship is obviously strained after this and becomes absolutely devastating by the end of the film when Anna Paquin takes over the role. He says he did everything he did to protect them, but the only thing they needed protecting from in the end was himself and the life he lived. This character, Peggy Sheeran, is very effective in bringing emotional weight to the story. But if you look at her character below the surface, you'll see that her presence also serves as a metaphor for Frank's own conscience. Her silent, judgmental eyes reflect his own inner self-disgust back to him. Ignoring his relationship with his daughter is like ignoring the emotional consequences of his actions. You can see this most glaringly in this scene.
Why?
By what?
Why haven't you called Joe?
That question rings in his ears like a recently fired pistol.
I'm gonna call him now.
During the scenes leading up to Frank killing Jimmy Hoffa, Frank has to get in the car with Chucky O'Brien and Sally Bugs. While in the car, Chucky and Sally are discussing a fish that Chucky had to deliver just prior to their meeting, and how one should never deliver a fish in one's own car. This scene accomplishes a lot. It serves to prolong the inevitable, despicable action Frank would rather not do. It normalizes the scene, making it feel like an everyday conversation instead of the lead-up to the killing of an American icon. And it's a beautiful metaphor. The fish has left a scent in the car, a scent that will be difficult, if not impossible, to remove.
Never put a fish in your car. You never get the smell out. Unless you pack it tight, you know?
No, I know.
You know?
Right.
Remember that.
I know.
It'll help you in life.
After this act, and all the similar acts he's committed in his life, Frank will never be able to get rid of the smell on his soul. The last metaphor on my list is subtle, but reverberates into the final shot of the film. The first time Frank is asked to stay in Jimmy Hoffa's hotel room, something he will do many times throughout the film, Jimmy leaves the door to his bedroom cracked open slightly. Here's how one article put it. The way the scene reads is that Jimmy, aware that he has plenty of enemies, is leaving the door open as a means of self-defense. Literally and metaphorically, he doesn't want the door shut on him. He doesn't want to be boxed in and trapped by his enemies. But leaving the door open also gives him a vague sense of power. Although the sad irony of this scene is that in this moment, Jimmy is trusting his protection to his future killer. The last 30 minutes or so of this movie is my favorite section by far. This is where everything starts to hit home. All the storylines get tied up and the themes of the movie get one last word in. There's even a second communion scene between De Niro and Pesci, yet it's very different than the first. Everything has changed. Their bond is weakening, and ultimately, it dies. Everyone close to Frank over the course of his life and everyone we've just seen over the last 3+ hours dies. And after a chat with a priest, he asks him to leave the door cracked open. Now this echoes what Jimmy Hoffa did earlier in the movie. Here at the end, Frank is a hitman reduced to scared old man with nobody to comfort him. The sins he committed end up being all for nothing as time takes it all away. All those petty grievances and alliances and claims to power mean nothing to the sands of time. The open door is simultaneously a symbol of regret and a symbol of fear. Frank is both honoring the memory of the man he killed and is seeking security in case someone out there comes to paint his house. And yet what is saddest of all is that no one is coming. He's a relic of a bygone era. He's forgotten. There are two camps that exist in the movie-going public. People who simply want to be entertained and be able to shut off their brains, and people who want to engage with a film on an artistic level, who enjoy deciphering and analyzing metaphors, symbols, and images. Entertainment people view movies like they're rides, roller coasters that give you a quick thrill. Art people, however, view movies as paintings. Roller coasters require no investment at all from the writer, but art is a 50-50 investment between artist and the viewer. It takes some work, but investing mental energy in analyzing art can bring so much depth and value to the human experience. Art is a mirror that reveals something about who we are as humans, something about what it means to be on this earth, something that sticks with us and gets inside us. Like the scene in The Matrix where Neo touches the mirror and it begins to take him over. That is how we can be awakened to a new reality. The Irishman is such a work of art. It is a somber and melancholy reflection on how time reduces us all, even men of power, to nothing. Our grievances, jobs, sins are for naught in the end. It is a great American tragedy that forces you to confront what it is you're building in this world and asks if it's worth it. This film got stuck in my mind. It got under my skin. It held a mirror of questions up to my face, forcing me to engage with them. What do we have left when so much of our identity is stripped away? Why do we continue to toil knowing we will all just die in the end? What is the point of all of this? And one final question at the heart of it all, the question De Niro is pondering in the final frame, the question lodged in my skull like a bullet.
I never understood how they would just keep digging their own graves, you know? Stop!
Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, Why It's Great exists to bring positivity to the internet, and we do that through video essays just like this one. So if you believe in our mission and you like this video, please consider subscribing. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. For as little as $1 per month, you can be a part of bringing positivity to the internet with us. There are some heavy themes in this film, and the end of it can make it feel like there's no point to life. But I truly believe that living positively, living for the good of other people, and being generous are ways that our lives can truly have meaning. Thank you so much for watching, and the world is better because you're a part of it.